Jose, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you, Jim?
Fantastic. All right. Well, Jose, the floor is all yours. Take us across the finish line here. We've heard from 11 other QOFs today. You're lucky number 12, and then we'll cut loose for the happy hour mixer. Go ahead, Jose. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'll try to put the pitch here. Let's talk about Puerto Rico. Talk about a different strategy for opportunity zones. My name is Jose Torres. I'm the founder and managing partner of Manejo Capital Partners. Basically, let me give you the disclaimer. Obviously, this is not offered to sell securities. Any sale of securities will be done through a private placement memorandum. But we're here because Puerto Rico is the probably largest opportunity zone fund area in the country. 95% of Puerto Rico qualifies as an opportunity zone fund. At the same time, Puerto Rico suffered some incredible damage through 2017 from back-to-back hurricanes. That's one of the reasons that got me thinking about relocating back to Puerto Rico. When I learned about opportunity zones in 2018, and I heard about the opportunities in Puerto Rico, because 95% of the area in Puerto Rico qualifies, I started learning about opportunity zones, and I thought that for sure this should be part of the solution for bringing Puerto Rico back from the damage that occurred. Just very briefly, a couple of points. Puerto Rico has about 3 million people that are US citizens. It has about 100 billion GDP. That's significant. So when you look about an opportunity zone fund that's only focused on Puerto Rico, it's a pretty large market and there's a lot of opportunities. Probably some impacts of the hurricanes that are really astonishing is about 3,000 people lost their lives. Some people were out of power for over 11 months. And there was over $100 billion worth of damage. So the real need here for private capital is significant, even though there will be some federal aid. So our solution was to put together the Puerto Rico Opportunity Zone Fund to try to help and invest in the future of Puerto Rico. Manejo Capital really is basically an alternative asset management firm. I founded that in late 2018. We're here in Puerto Rico. We're locally based, minority owned. And our real purpose is to try to promote and make tax advantage investments in Puerto Rico. We bring the global experience and also the local knowledge. And our goal is really to try to invest in a portfolio of renewable energy, sustainable businesses, and infrastructure, and really try to provide some diversification to opportunity zone investors away from the real estate asset class. We're really committed to Puerto Rico, to sustainable investment and to opportunity zones. That's really our core of what we're trying to do and what our focus is. Puerto Rico Opportunity Zone Fund is basically a tax advantage private equity fund. We're focused on ESG investment. There's many single asset funds. There are many real estate funds, but our focus is really to manage this as a true private equity fund. Our goal is to really have a portfolio of assets and actually to reinvest capital during the full 10-year period to maximize what we're trying to do is maximize capital gains for our institutional investors. When we think about Puerto Rico, why Puerto Rico? It has an educated labor force. It's a strategic location for people who want to produce goods here and import or export. It's also a U.S. jurisdiction. That will help not only from the laws, but also from the currency risk of investing. So although we're a separate tax jurisdiction from a legal and currency perspective, it's like being in the United States. Also, Puerto Rico has some significant tax incentives. I'm glad to have seen Life Afar earlier today. Many people do not understand how Puerto Rico works, and the more opportunity zone funds that we have, the better it will be for people to actually take part of the opportunity of investing in Puerto Rico. And the last point, which we already mentioned, is Puerto Rico is the land of OZ. 95% of it is qualified opportunity zones. That allows for businesses that will traditionally be difficult to invest in the mainland USA to be easy to invest here in Puerto Rico. We also have tried to partner up with best in class. So we have DLA Piper as our legal advisor. We have NES Financial as our fund administrator. We also believe that they do a great job, not only on fund administration, but our impact fund investment tracking. So that's part of what we really care about here in Puerto Rico. We have a target of $20 million. Our target return is about 20%. That might seem high, but when we discuss this strategy, you'll understand why. I've seen everybody ask, does that include the opportunity zone benefit? The answer is no. Every investor basically can calculate that for themselves. This will be the return that the fund expects to provide each limited partner. And then the investment minimum is $100,000. Our investment strategy right now is anchor or an investment that we have an exclusive right, and I will go into that. We expect to put about 50% of the fund investment into that, and then the rest of it will be done in renewable energy, which we have a significant amount of deals under the pipeline. And there's significant legislation in Puerto Rico that will provide plenty of opportunity, not just for our fund, but for many other investors. We will also try to make a distribution around the 2026 end of the year in order for investors to cover their potential deferred tax liability. But our goal is really to make the biggest capital gain appreciation through the 10 years. So our plan is not to be doing current distributions at this stage. We have spent over 2 years putting this strategy together and also working on putting the pipeline together. So we're really happy to be here now. Puerto Rico only passed their law in late 2019, and their actual regulations for the local opportunity zone law only came out in October of last year. So that's why we're here now, because I think the market is ready, the regulation is ready. The first investment and why we're here today is because we have signed an exclusivity to invest in C Combinator Puerto Rico. This is an opportunity to invest in a company that is trying to solve the problem of sargassum, basically seaweed. That's how most people will understand what sargassum is. This is a problem that is actually rapid in the Caribbean and Mexico, and it tends to come out of the coast of South Africa. C Combinator was spun off out of a nonprofit a couple of years ago, and they have been working on solving this problem. They have actually decided to make their largest investment here in Puerto Rico. They currently have operations in Mexico, the UK, and the US. And this is based on technology and licensing that they have patent with a joint venture in Ireland. Right now, they have R&D operations in Puerto Rico, and they have a collection business in Mexico. Very briefly, the structure really contemplates the fund investing $8 million to build the biorefinery. That will provide the fund with a 35% ownership interest in what is C Combinator Puerto Rico. The fund will basically be also providing the working capital for the business. The biorefinery will process about 10,000 tons of seaweed a year into value-added biodegradable products. Most of those products will be used by European companies to make either consumer product goods or other goods. C Combinator has actually signed letters of intent of over $10 million of revenue for year 2021, and also have achieved a significant tax decrease from the government of Puerto Rico, which provides a significant advantage to the project and why they decided to also locate in Puerto Rico. We have negotiated a very attractive cash flow sharing structure. Basically, our goal is to have attractive, basically investments that will have downside protection. And we've done that here through the cash flow sharing structure. Although we'll be investing 100% of the capital that goes into the biorefinery, there is already a business here, there's already people, there's capital invested, and there's an R&D operation. But we will actually be receiving 100% of the cash flow from the operations until the fund gets 100% of the initial capital back. After that, we'll be receiving 75% of the cash flow from operations until the fund gets a 3 times multiple and a 75% IRR back. What this does really, and after that, we'll just simply own 35% of the Puerto Rico business. Well, what this does is it helps us mitigate any issues with construction, with volume production on the early years, or also it will help us with any price issues when we start selling the product. We will also have the right of first refusal for any other business that C Combinator does in Puerto Rico. Why are we also here? It's an ESG strategy, and it's all about the environmental and economic impact. In addition to job creation, the biggest impact here has to do with CO2. The amount of sargassum that we'll be collecting and processing will be the equivalent of taking 34,000 cars a year from the roads. So if you think about it, this is significantly impactful from an environmental perspective. Part of the NES strategy is to calculate this, and they use the impact rate of return. They ran this through their model, and this shows a very high N on that range. The rest of our strategy is all about renewable energy in Puerto Rico. There's over 5 gigawatt of opportunities that represents over $5 billion. Obviously, we're a small fund right now, but long term, we expect this to be a significant pipeline of investment opportunities for us and others. Puerto Rico enacted a law in 2019 that requires a significant increase in renewable energy. It requires 40% by 2025. And 60% by 2040 and 100% by 2050. But we're only at 2.5%. So even if we don't even come close to those goals, there's a significant amount of capital that's needed for renewable energy. When you look at the current situation in Puerto Rico, yes, Puerto Rico is bankrupt and is going through a restructuring that's coming to an end, hopefully towards the end of this year, but that also gives us an opportunity to get the best deals right now as there is little competition at this stage. There was an RFP issued recently, a few weeks ago, by the local utility for 1.5 gigawatts of renewable energy. And those bids are due on May 3rd. So that will provide us a pipeline of opportunity. We're very well positioned to take advantage of that. Again, very briefly, renewable energy projects have a significant impact both on job creation and also on the environment. I'm not going to give you statistics. They're here. You can look at them when we share the deck. Like I mentioned, we're structured as a private equity fund, a very traditional 2% management fee, 20% carried interest. We expect to invest a minimum of 1% as the GP. We already told you we're partner with DLA, Piper, and NES Financial. And again, our plan is to try to reinvest capital to create the maximum capital gain for limited partners. Here you can find our contact, my personal contact information and email. Also, the website for our fund is porc.fund. You can find additional information there. And if you just want to learn more about Monjor Capital, you can reach on monjorcapital.com. Jimmy, I'm available for questions if there are any.
Excellent. The one question was, are you going to make your deck available for download? Is that all right if I put that on the website later this week?
Yes, I will do that. And there's a significant amount of information about Puerto Rico, about opportunity zones here that we can make available. And it's really here on the background of the deck. So it will be available, and anybody who's interested, feel free to give me a call to discuss.
Fantastic. Let's see. We've got one question here from Brad. And then I did want to let everybody know that the happy hour mixer is just getting underway right now. And I posted a link to that happy hour mixer session in the chat pane. So pull up your chat pane in Zoom right now and click on over to that happy hour mixer. But we'll wrap up here, Jose, with this one question from Brad. Brad says, Jose, super interesting opportunities in Puerto Rico. Congratulations. Curious how your team has structured around the repatriation issue for U.S. investors when they bring funds back to mainland U.S., as my understanding is that they are taxed on these funds returning to the mainland, even though there is an OZ structure.
Well, that's a very good point. That's what we've been working for over 6 months right now with Grant Thornton. Maria de Los Angeles. She's basically our tax advisor, and they'll be the fund accountant. What we have done, and this is probably don't have enough time to go in detail, but we're going to be making the limited partnership file as a corporation in the US. So investors will not be subject to Puerto Rican source income. That's really the short answer of it. And we're going to manage that together with some of the tax benefits from the renewable energy project. So basically, you're going to be trying to minimize taxes at the fund level, and we will basically shield every US investor from the potential of Puerto Rican source income. Has taken a lot of time and money to go through, as we're probably the first fund that is really looking to be a Delaware limited partnership investing in Puerto Rico. The other point that I will make is that we're actually only investing in Puerto Rico, so Puerto Rican investors can take benefit of investing in the fund. One of the regulations in Puerto Rico is that for a Puerto Rican investor to take the equivalent of the OC benefits under the Puerto Rico tax regime, that the fund only invests in Puerto Rico QOCBs. So that's why you see our strategy specifically to also be able to allow for Puerto Rican investors to come into the fund.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jose. I'm going to cut you loose now and conclude today's OZ Pitch Day. If you do need to get in touch with Jose, he's got his contact information up there, Torres at MonorCapitalPartners.com, where you can visit his fund's website, once again, at PROZ.fund. So Jose, I'm going to get you off the stage now. Thank you, Jose, for joining us.
Thank you, Jimmy.